there's one there's a little bit of a group about basically schools saying they can meet need when they're not meeting need, and what can parents do about that. And it follows on from there.
Well, if they're saying they can meet need and they're not, then you apply without an EHCP, you apply for an EHCP because the EHCP is your child, it's not your schools. You may move. If you move to another local authority, they have to do a new HCP. But absolutely, if your school is not meeting need, even though they're saying they can, you apply. And the reason that schools are also struggling, they have problems with staff, they have problems with money, they're also struggling. And they are sometimes unwilling for a child to have an EHCP because then they have got to provide what's in the EHCP. And they don't always, people just think EHCPs come with money. They don't. Schools have a overall budget to spend on all children with SEND, and only for children who have a much higher level of need will they get extra money. And that's why they can be a bit reluctant to do that. But I think we covered this in session 1, which is that if your school is saying, we don't want to apply for an EHCP, I mean, it's good if they'll do it with you, but otherwise just say, fine, well, we're applying ourselves. Let them know out of politeness, just apply yourself. Don't worry about it.
Moving on from that, another family, their daughter has got cone dystrophy. School are providing evidence that she's making progress in her learning, so the local authority don't think she needs an EHCP assessment. I mean, I think you've kind of covered that in terms of the school are not supporting the family with any of the process.
Yeah. They often don't, but that actually shouldn't make any difference to the outcome at all. They don't have to be supporting you. It is based, whether or not your child will be assessed is based entirely on the law. It's not based on what the school think.
And again, we've had an emergency review at a school with the purpose of discussing change of provision and placement. The local authorities continuing to name the same school, even though the school have said they can't meet need and the family don't think they can meet need, that the school can meet need. So this is basically the local authority suggesting that this child should remain at the school they're at, even though nobody else thinks they should do. Local authority are forcing a phased return to school, causing a lot of distress.
That would be out of the tribunals. That's not within the tribunal's power to deal with. That's actually quite a difficult one. Gosh, there's so many questions.
But you're surely appealing against the placement. If local authority is saying you're staying put, you're appealing Section I.
Yeah,
they think their child should be elsewhere.
Yeah.
There are a couple of questions about Section K. One of them was basically sort of asking, I think, if I'm interpreting it correctly, asking why, in a way, what do you mean by advice and information in the last slide that you can't appeal? Oh, okay. I think that was about why can't you appeal what's in Section K, I think, if I've read that right.
Well, Section K is the advice and information that's from
professionals.
From professionals that's gone into, and they can't, I guess you can't appeal that because that's coming from outside. That's people who are putting that kind of information in. I know someone's asked about it not all appearing. And I think
inaccurate reports that have been quoted.
Yeah, and if the local authority are refusing to if they're not putting everything in and they're refusing to do that, you would then go to the local government ombudsman and complain there, and that just threatening that will probably be enough to get them to do it. But if not, that would be a case for the ombudsman to work with. So that's what I would do for that one. Personal budgets are not covered with this, and I think it's something that we would need to look at separately, because this is not covered in the tribunal, unfortunately. And again, you would have to go through the local government ombudsman for issues to do with personal budgets.
There's also, I'm sorry we're rushing through this so quickly, there's also a question about children with PMLD. What if the local authority dismissed the judge's order and refused to implement it and opted to start a new EHCP, then remove the provisions that the judge ordered, then refused to include reports and recommendations?
You go back to the tribunal service and tell them immediately and
Yeah.
they will order them to do it. You absolutely have to go back to the tribunal service.
We've
We've
been,
also, there's a question there from somebody with a child over 18.
yeah.
They cannot cease the EHCP because they
Mm.
don't have any further suitable places. Even if they had to find someone that was out of area, they have to find something. They can't, that is not a reason for ceasing an EHCP. I can see there's a question about music,
Yeah.
and congratulations for getting a level 6.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, but unfortunately, music is considered as an extracurricular thing, and you are very, very unlikely to get it into an EHCP, unfortunately. So I don't think you can appeal that. And I know that's really hard, especially if that's something that means a huge amount to your son. And music is such a lovely thing to do, but no, I wouldn't appeal that personally.
There was an early question referring to when you were talking about reasons for not issuing the HCP, and you said they can't turn down on the basis of, I think it's if there's adequate provision in a school, they can't. They hold on a minute. Laura said they couldn't turn down on the basis of normal provision in school. There is an expectation that schools provide high quality teaching and reasonable adjustments, additional to and different from would need the support of an EHCP. Oh, I don't know if you want to ask Amanda to try and unpick that a bit, unless you
I
understand
mean,
that better
again,
than I do.
the decision on whether a child is assessed and is issued with an EHCP is not based on what that particular school can do. It's whether or not, if all schools would be considered to be able to support a child, then you may be turned down. So if you have a child with a very, very mild degree of sight loss, maybe a child, for instance, if you have a child who is fully sighted in one eye, but not in the other, but has no sight in the other eye, arguably that could be dealt with in school because the child could be sat on the right, a different side of the classroom. Things could be put into place to ensure their safety with terms of lack of three-dimensional vision. But arguably, they could say a court might think, actually, yes, this could be met in any school. But if you have a child who needs, in my opinion, if you have a child who needs reformatted text, be it through audio, large print, or braille, to see what they're learning, that is really hard for a school to do, without the guidelines in an EHCP and without the support the EHCP gives. So I would say schools are very reluctant. There was a time, the reason that schools get a pot of money to share with all their children, because there was a time many, many decades ago where you would get extra money for every child who had an EHCP. So a lot of schools were applying for children for EHCPs with very mild needs who they didn't really need them. And it was costing too much money. So now they look at a school, they look at the area, whether it's in an area of deprivation, how many children have English as a second language, the unemployment rate for the area, all sorts of things. And they say, right, you're going to have X amount, make do with it. Now, that school may have a lot of children with disabilities or not. And it's usually the case that they have more children needing support than they have money for, and they have to divvy it out between all those kids. They can apply, and particularly with children who are Braille users or audio users or have very, very high needs for large print, they can apply for what's called top-up funding, and it's worth asking for that. But again, all of these decisions have to be made around the child, not around the school.
Okay, I'm going to
Someone's asked about mediation.
What's the question? I had mediation. Then LA officer did not give me the decision on the day. That's not unusual because often they're not decision makers
So what they're
themselves,
saying
which
is,
is
do
a
I go by
problem.
the date on the mediation certificate? I think it is the
Right.
date on the certificate, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, always do everything as quickly as possible if you can, because you're going to end up waiting a long time anyway. And there's another one here, which is the classic thing we hear. Mainstream say they can't, little one at nursery. Mainstream say they can't meet needs. Local centre schools don't have capacity. LA don't want to pay. I'm not sure whether so you have an EHCP. This is really, really hard because we're seeing this more and more where there's just simply no places at special schools and local schools don't have it. So the local authority have a duty to support a school in ensuring they can meet your child's needs. They have to go to school somewhere. They absolutely legally have to go to school. So the thing to do is to say to the local authority, the onus of responsibility on provision falls actually on the local authority, not the school. And if a school say they can't meet needs, then you need to give the school more money and more support so they can meet needs. They do have to support your child.
Oh, there was a great question right at the end, which is the $1 million question. What's the best way to feel confident about what is appropriate and a reasonable expectation of provision for your child with SSI status? How can we know if our children's needs are actually being met, if they are happy in their setting and making progress, albeit small steps? It's very hard to know if you have nothing, no one to compare it with.
Well, I have a phrase which I chuck into a lot of children's EHCPs, which is this child will be able to access the full curriculum in their required formats at the same time as their peers. And that's the absolute starting point and the cornerstone of an EHCP, which is that they absolutely have to be able to see what they're meant to see and to be able to access the entire curriculum, whether that's a video being shown in the classroom, whether it's printed, whatever it is. So I would say a reasonable expectation is that your child will be able to access the full curriculum at the same time as their peers, which doesn't mean that the teacher comes in, the teaching assistant comes in half an hour into the class with something they've photocopied, which is unreadable. And it doesn't mean that they're sent to the resource room because there's no Wi-Fi in the classroom and nobody's bothered to download the work on their tablet beforehand. It means at the same time and in the same room as their peers. That would be the basis. And you can add on to that things about supporting them with their socializing at school, with their physical PE needs in school and all the things. But I would say the expectation is that they can access the same curriculum as every other child in the school. And I can't say that more strongly because that's the right that our children have. Why shouldn't they? Absolutely, why shouldn't they have that? That's these children have all of our children have such a lot of potential, and with the right support they will achieve their potential. Everyone's child will have a different potential, but I always say regardless of what potential they have, the vital thing is that they can reach their potential. On a personal note, my daughter, who is effectively blind in one eye and she has about a third of her sight in her other eye, qualified this summer as a doctor, not as a PhD doctor, but as a doctor. She's now a junior doctor earning junior doctor peanuts working 48 hours a week. Now, she wouldn't have done that if we hadn't gone to a SEND tribunal for the local authority, disability discrimination, all of those things. But that's what she did. I can see someone's asking for contacts. I think if you need any further information, just go through Look.
I'm afraid there's 2 or 3 that we've not had chance to answer yet. I don't know if we can get these sent on to us, Ellen, so that we can give answers in time.
Yeah, and the resources
I'm just
are
conscious of the
that one
time.
week afterwards. Yeah, I'm conscious of time as well. But thank you so much, Laura, for such a comprehensive presentation, and for Sophie for managing the questions. I know there's been quite a lot going on in the chat in the kind of last little while of the session. So yeah, if anything that we haven't addressed, we'll pick them up and see whether we can address them in any handouts or additional resources that we can provide. I can see that Georgie's put a message in the chat as well. So I don't know if Georgie, you want to just remind everyone again about what you're offering and how they can get in touch, just quickly before we finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to reiterate, if you're being faced with a refusal to assess, and you can't get past that first hurdle, I do have a limited capacity to help parents with making those appeals. And if you're interested, please do email Look, and that was info@look.org.uk, and then we'll see if maybe I can help out if you're interested in that.
Lovely, thank you, Georgie. Thank you everybody for being here tonight, and a big thank you to Laura from More Vision, and Sophie from Blatchington Court Trust, and Lynn, who isn't here tonight, but I know who's put in so much work.
She's on holiday.
Well deserved. She's done so much work for this series especially. So we've really enjoyed working together on this series, and we hope that everyone who's been attending these sessions has found it useful and will be able to put what we've learned into practice and go back and use the resources that we've made as well.